Welcome back again to the continuation of our DAT course. Right now, today I want us to look at the concept of asynchronous programming or asynchronous operations in DAT. Right, so it says here an asynchronous operation executes in a thread separate from the main application thread. When an application calls a method to perform an operation asynchronously, the application can continue executing while the asynchronous method performs its task. Right. So we are going to take a look at this. Uh, we are just going to take a look at this concept. All right. I have a note here. Okay, and it's talking about asynchronous programming and features. Okay, so we also talk about features in that. All right, so we have looked at the definition of asynchronous programming. All right, it says here that an asynchronous operation is an operation that's actually executes in a thread separate from the main application thread. And they gave an instance here. It says when an application calls a method from an operation to perform an operation asynchronously, the application can continue executing while the asynchronous method performs the task. First, I would like us to look at the meaning of this word asynchronous. Alright, it says not existing or occurring at the same time. Okay, let's look at the second definition. It says controlling the timing of operations by the use of pauses sent when the previous operation is completed rather than as regular intervals. Alright, so this means that we can have two operations execute at the same time. Alright, and we can also control the timing of the operation, the timing of the execution of two methods. Alright, now I'll first have to create a file. Okay, so let's say we have a main function, and in this main function we have two operations. The first is the print method for, let's say, this method prints hello. Right, this is the print statement that just prints hello, and then we have another one that prints good morning. Okay, so if I run this code, if I execute this code, these two are printed at the same time. Alright, they are both printed at the same time, but it is possible to delay the execution of one of them. Alright, it is possible to delay the execution of one of them. Let's say I want this to be executed after some seconds, maybe after 2-3 seconds. Alright, I want this to execute first and then this. Okay, what can I do? What I can do is I can introduce a delay method. There are actually different ways to do this, but this is just one. I can introduce a delay method. Alright, now this is a class called features. Remember what we did about classes and object and method, right? About classes and methods. So this is a method delayed in a class called feature. So we have a class or a type in that called feature. Alright, so so I can call this delayed method right here, and let me see the implementation. Alright, and then here I'll provide another class called duration, and I'm going to define a seconds parameter. So I passed the value 3 to seconds, meaning that I want a delay of 3 seconds to exist between this operation and this operation. Okay, so if I run this print, alright, I have to provide this. So if I run this print, you see that this is printed, and then after 3 seconds this is printed. Okay, now why did I have to provide this? I have to now if I had said, alright, remember what we talked about, what we said about asynchronous programming, or as the word asynchronous. It means, to control the timing of operations. To control the timing of operations. Alright, so we want to control the timing of these two operations. Okay, so whereas the first operation is executed instantly, the second operation is executed after 3 seconds. Alright, but then the Dart compiler does not, the Dart compiler actually executes code line by line. Alright, so it's going to execute this one first. This is going to be printed instantly, and then this delay will be initiated. Alright, this delay will be initiated, but this particular operation is not going to wait for this delay to be completed before printing. Okay, so, and that is because this operation occurs on a different thread. It occurs on a different thread. If you look at the explanation in tutorials point, it says as an asynchronous operation executes in a thread separate from the main thread. Right, it executes in a thread separate from the main thread. So we have a main thread. I wish, right, we have a main thread. All right, so there's a main thread, right, and then there's a different thread which is let me call this async thread. All right, so in our program, this is what is happening. These two normal normal methods, normal operations are being executed on the main thread, while this one is being executed on a different thread. So there's a delay, quite alright, but it doesn't affect the execution of this one because these two are actually on the main thread. Alright, these two are actually on the main thread. So how do I know that this is actually being executed? I can do something here, dots then, this dots then, this dots then is actually going to is actually going to do something. It's actually going to execute something after this duration is completed, right? So in asynchronous methods like this one, like delayed, in asynchronous methods like delayed, right, we have the ability to use a method like then to execute an operation to show that, or to execute something as soon as our delay is completed, as soon as this asynchronous operation is completed, right? So I'm going to say dot then. So dot then wait. Sorry. What's actually the okay. Dot then. Alright, so dot then, and I'm just going to say print completed. Alright, so what I'm just saying is, after this duration is complete, this 3 seconds delay is complete, then print completed. Alright, so what's going to happen now is that we are going to see that these two will be printed first. Alright, these two will be printed first, will be executed first, and then after 3 seconds this will be executed. Alright, so hello and good morning, then 3 seconds later completed. Okay, so my initial plan was to delay the execution of this using this feature.delayed. So what do I now do? How do I now make sure that this operation waits for this feature.delayed to complete before it is executed? Alright, I'll have to use a keyword called await. Okay, so what this await is going to do is that it is going to stop the execution of this print statement. Alright, it is going to stop the execution of this method until this is completed. Alright, so this await simply means we are saying that every other operation after this should wait for this. Alright, but we are having an error here. And what does it say? It says the await expression can only be used in an asynchronous function. Now, this function, right? This function is executing an asynchronous operation. Alright, because we are now using this await. We are now using this await inside of this function. It means that this main function, it means that this main function is executing an asynchronous operation. Therefore, it is an asynchronous function. Alright, so it says here that we should try marking the function body with async. Alright, So I'm going to do just that, async. So this is an indication that this function is an asynchronous function. All right, so I'm going to run it now. Now I get hello printed first, and after 3 seconds I get completed, because this duration is now complete. Right, this delay is now complete, and then good morning is now printed. All right, so I believe what happened here makes sense. All right, I believe, because we are using the same thing here. All right, we are using the same await here to wait for our network request to complete, right, and fetch these details, these posts. All right, remember what we did in our last class, right? We used our DO package to fetch some data from the internet. All right, so normally when you load your app, when you load your Instagram app or your Facebook app, right, you have to wait for some time for posts to fetch. Right, you have to wait for the data to load in your device. So that is what is going on here. The exact same thing is what is playing out here. All right, so I am using this await to wait for the execution of this method. All right, so when the method finally returns, when the data finally returns from this method, all right, we can store the data in this response variable, and then we can use it to do whatever we want to do. Right, we can display it and so on. So that is it about asynchronous operations. All right, so let's just go through our notes, these notes that we have right here. So it says some asynchronous operations take time, like API calls. All right, like this example I gave, this is an API call. All right, this is an API call. API call simply means making network requests, making requests to a server. All right, so this is in API calls, in reading files, in database queries, and in timers, like this example I gave here. All right, yeah, I timed the execution of this statement, this print statement, using this. Okay, so if that's waited for them synchronously, in other words, if everything is happening at the same time, if all our operations are happening at the same time, the app would freeze. Okay, so asynchronous programming allows that to continue running while waiting. Okay, so here they talked about futures. What is a future? A future represents a value that will be available later. Think of it as, I promise to give you a result in the future. Okay, and we have an example here. So let's just execute this example code. Just comment this out. All right, so we have this fetch data. All right, and you can see that the return type of this data is feature of type string. Okay, and why is it like this? Now you can see that we are using this class here again, feature, this feature class again. All right, so you can call this a feature class. You can call it a feature type, because types are essentially classes. All right, types are essentially classes. For instance, string is actually a class. All right, string is actually a class. It's an abstract class. Okay, when we created objects, let's say I have this class, and then I have an object of this class like this. Sorry, class car, right? So this is I initialized my object using an instance of car, all right? And then what is the type of the data type of my object? It is car, right? The data type of my object is car, all right? If I extend this car to, okay, let me use vehicle. Okay, vehicle. Remember what we did about polymorphism, right? So I'm going to have another class car that extends vehicle. All right, so polymorphism is what we have here right now. All right, so I have an object of car, right, but it is of the type vehicle. All right, because car is a subtype of vehicle. Okay, so whenever you hear about types, just know that types originate from classes. All right, so the return type of this function is of the feature type, all right, which comes from the feature class, in which we also have this delayed method. All right, so this is a method in the feature class, delayed. Okay, and it's actually feature of type string. Why? Because after this feature is executed, right, we are returning a string, right? We are returning a string from it. So that is why the return type of this method is feature of type string. I don't know if you get it. We are returning a feature which is returning a string. So therefore, the return type of the method that we are returning this from is feature of type string. Okay, so back to what we were talking about. Yeah, so it says a feature represents a value that will be available later. So as you can see here, this data is not going to be available until after 2 seconds. All right, until after 2 seconds. I can increase it to any number of seconds I want. Okay, or even minutes. Okay, there's a minutes property in this duration class, or even hours, and there's days also. I don't know if there's weeks. Okay, so it's seconds, minutes, hours, days. You also have microseconds and milliseconds. All right, but I'm going to use seconds. So now let's proceed. So states of a feature has 3 states. The pending state, right, which is when we are waiting for this to complete, this duration to complete, or when we are waiting for our data, right? In this case, we are waiting for this data to be available. All right, so that is the pending state. And then there's the completed state, which is when it is finished with data, when our data is finally available. All right, and then there's also the error state, meaning failed with exception. Exception means an error, a problem that occurred in our code, either in our code or from the server. Okay, so these are the 3 states. All right, the pending states, when it is still running. All right, we are waiting for the data to be available. The completed state, when the data is finally available, and then the error state, when something goes wrong with our API request, right? Or with our asynchronous execution. Right, so let's call this function that we created. I'm going to have a main function, and then I'm going to try and call this method here. Okay, if I run it, I'm not going to get anything. I'm not going to get anything because, of course, nothing is being printed. All right, there's no print statement anywhere in here. All right, there's no print statements anywhere in here. So what I can do is I can print this. I'm going to store it in a, let me just print it. All right, I'll print it first directly. So if I happen to print this, I'm going to get instance of future string. All right, so this is just telling me that, you know, this is an instance of future string. All right, an instance of future string. In other words, what I am printing is a future string. It's not giving me the value. All right, it is not giving me the value. So how do I get the value? How do I get the value from this method? Right, I'm going to try and store it in a variable. I'm going to say string data, and then initialize it to fetch data. Right, I'm getting an error. And what is the error? It says the value of type future string can't be assigned to a variable of type string. Right, so it says try changing the type of the variable or casting the right hand side to string. So this data, of course, you can see the return type future string, right? And I'm attempting to store it in a string, and this is giving me a problem. It's giving me an error. So what do I do? What I should do in this case is I should wait for the value of this, because right now this is a future, right? It's of type future string. But if I now use this await to wait for it, right? What I'm actually waiting for now is this data. All right, this data loaded. All right, so by the time this operation is completed, this asynchronous operation is completed, all right, I will have my data here. So I can now store it in a string. All right, this data is now of type string because I am using this await to wait for the data. I hope it makes sense, right? And now what do I have to do now? Why am I having error here? Remember we talked about this before, right? It says the await expression can only be used in an async function. So what I have to do is I have to mark this function, this main function, as async. Okay, and then I can now print my data. Alright, so if I hit run, I'll wait for 5 seconds, and then I'll have my data loaded. Alright, so I believe that's basically it for asynchronous function. We have looked at this method .then. Alright, we have seen what it does. So next I will talk about error handling. Right, I'll talk about error handling in the next lesson. Thank you very much. See you in the next lesson.